It's Game 8 for the Boston Celtics, winners of 5 straight as they look to make it 6th against the Sacramento Kings at TD Garden. It's another edition of the Celtics pregame report for CLNS Media. I'm your host, Josue Pavone. I'm alongside my colleague of WEEI, Ty Anderson, is here to preview this matchup. What's up, Ty?
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm good, hanging in there, watching these guys win games. Nothing new, I guess.
No, I guess not. I mean, this was a pretty quick turnaround in a lot of ways, huh? We went from talking about them losing games to now they're doing nothing but winning games. So such is life in the NBA, I suppose, but if you're a Celtics fan, you'll certainly take it.
Right, absolutely. I mean, while the Celtics are hoping that they can stretch this winning streak tonight against the Kings, a team that's trying to snap their 6-game skid. This is certainly a rebuilding team, of course, Ty. I mean, they drafted 3 first-rounders. Headlining the picks was number 5 pick, De'Aaron Fox, who enters tonight's game averaging 13 points, 5 assists. Ty, do you think the Kings gave up a little too soon on DeMarcus Cousins? I mean, clearly he didn't have the best attitude, but I can't help but think they could have gotten something better out of the deal that involved Buddy Hield coming from the New Orleans Pelicans.
I mean, I have to think so. I think especially now when you look at sort of what some of the teams around the league have done, what they're doing, I think that you would have had more suitors maybe this year if you held on to it. You look at Cleveland, obviously, they have the Brooklyn pick now. Obviously, you're sort of playing hypotheticals here, but if they make that trade with Boston and now they have that Brooklyn pick, are you able to sort of get that away from them? Maybe if you were sending Cousins to Cleveland or something along those lines in a lot of ways, I could see that being a good fit, or just something that they would do. But no, I do think that this was, it seemed as if they were panicking a little too soon when making this move. You do hit a point where you have to get rid of a player. I think we can look at the New York Knicks and say they waited entirely too long to get rid of Carmelo. But I don't know if Boogie was at that point yet. I think that what he brought to the table was still manageable and still sort of salvageable in terms of a trade. So I do think they gave up on him a little too soon. But at the same time, he was never long for Sacramento in so many ways.
Ty, you recently wrote an article for WEEI.com titled, "Can we stop acting like Gordon Hayward died?" Now, the headline clearly speaks for itself, but why did you feel compelled to put this article together? And is it because of we didn't see this sort of outcry when a similar situation happened to Paul George? Or was it just because, you just had it with all the sympathy towards Gordon Hayward?
I think it's definitely, I've had it with the sympathy because I think you look at this team and, what I watched on last Monday, I believe it was, or Tuesday, I'm sorry, was the New York Knicks got absolutely steamrolled by the Boston Celtics. It was on the back of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, two of their young, promising, bright future stars. At the end of the game, all you're hearing about is Gordon Hayward. And I was like, well, he didn't, it's a week old now. He didn't play tonight. He had no factor in this game. And you're starting to see positive things from this team. And it was almost as if we couldn't let those things happen without bringing up Gordon Hayward, which, in my opinion, is not a recipe for success with this team. I think that's going to create a mental hurdle in a lot of ways that we're not going to be able to appreciate what this team is doing or maybe what this team's ceiling truly is this year. Obviously, it's adjusted without Hayward, obviously. But if we're going to preface every sort of accomplishment with they don't have Hayward, we're going to have a long, miserable season, in my opinion, in terms of, coverage of this team and what we're writing about and talking about. So I just think that we should all move on because he's going to be back. I mean, if he's whether or not he's the same player remains to be seen, but he's going to be back at some point. So I just think that, there have been worse injuries. There have been greater losses in terms of players and athletes and ceiling. So I think if we spend all year complaining about what could have been, it's not going to do this team any justice, in my opinion.
This edition of the Celtics pregame report is being brought to you by the good fellows over at Greats.com, the makers of great, classic, stylish, and comfortable sneakers, sold at a great price. Head over to Greats.com and enter the promo code Celtics Roundtable to save 15% off of your first purchase. That's Greats.com, save 15%, enter the promo code Celtics Roundtable. Ty, what do the Celtics need to do in order to keep up this momentum going into, what's going to be a more tougher challenges, whether we're talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder and just around the corner we have the Golden State Warriors coming in?
Well, I think the biggest thing is in the bench. I mean, you look at these first few weeks here, Terry Rozier has just been unbelievable in terms of what he's brought to the table and what he's been able to do. I like Daniel Tice as well. Aaron Baines has been great too when he's coming in. He's been, sort of all over the map in terms of his role, but that's the guy that I love. I mean, because you can't have Kyrie and Horford playing 48 minutes a night. You just can't do it. So to be able to trust your bench and to be able to get scoring like they have, I really think that's a game changer for this team in a lot of ways. So if that can continue, and you're not worried about what happens when your superstars are not on the floor, I think that really changes the dynamic of your team in a lot of ways, especially in terms of what you're doing. I think against some of these upper echelon teams and what they do. So I think that's the biggest key, really, and that speaks for any great team. I think if you have a deep bench, it can really sort of alleviate some of your struggles or your pressure. You're talking about your starting five. So, and listen, I can't help but just be absolutely floored by what we've seen so far out of these players out of the gate, and rightfully so. I mean, Rozier's looking like another Ainge pick that was criticized at the time, but is making sense now. It took a little while, but here we are.
All right, Ty, prediction time. Who wins tonight?
Oh, Celtics. I mean, come on. This is Sacramento Kings. What are we doing here?
I got to do it, Ty.
Now that I say this, they're gonna lose. But I'm telling the Sacramento Kings are basically a G League team at this point. It's kind of gross that they're still this bad for this long. I mean, this is when we talk about a rebuild. When you talk about what the Celtics have been able to do, look at the Kings. I mean, this team has been rebuilding for, I think, almost a decade now, and they've just been pure garbage, and there's no sign of them getting out of it anytime soon either. Yeah,
Mike Bibby, Vlade Divac, Chris Webber, they're not walking through that door anymore, Ty.
No, I mean, hey, they could, but you even recognize them because the building's empty.
Yeah, Ty, I do it every episode, man. I gotta do the prediction question, but it's funny, man. I just can't help but think about them going all in on Buddy Hield. I mean, that was the centerpiece in that deal. I don't understand why. Of course, I think it was the owner or the GM was very big on him, and I just don't get it. I feel like they could have gone out and got a more of an established player along with draft picks, of course.
Absolutely, I think that's the biggest thing it comes back down to is. You need one of those two things, and I don't think they got either that are necessarily franchise-changing or going to accelerate this rebuild any further. I mean, this has already been a snail's-pace rebuild. So, this trade, I look at it and I said, okay, it's the same Kings as it's always been. I mean, they're just, I hate to rip them apart, but it's a bit of an embarrassment. I mean, you can't have a team like this, and you can't run a franchise like this and expect anything good to come of it. It's just insane to me. So, I'm with you there. I saw that trade and I said, no, that's a fake account. When it broke, I was like, that can't be real. But here we are. It's real. It's a nightmare if you're a Kings fan. I mean, it really almost makes you want to not be a Kings fan because you can't invest time and resources into a product like that. It's just impossible.
All right, he is Ty Anderson, guys. You can check out his work on the Green Street blog on weei.com, and make sure you give him a follow on Twitter @_TY Anderson. That's Ty Anderson from WEEI. Ty, man, appreciate you taking the time.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Celtics pregame report. Special thanks to Ty Anderson for checking in, and of course to everyone who tuned in to yet another edition of the Celtics pregame report. Make sure you check out the Guard Report after the game on CLNS Media's YouTube channel for all the raw and uncut videos from the locker room and the press table. Weekday shows air on the Celtics Newsfeed channel, on iTunes, Stitcher, and the CLNS Media mobile app. For today's Boston Celtics pregame report with Josue Pavone, this is Josue Pavone signing off.